You don't realize how fragile you are until someone notices the cracks you thought you'd hidden. Or maybe until that someone is your coworker, who looks at you like you're the most fascinating disaster he's ever seen and somehow wants to fix you instead of walking away. The first time Ethan touched my wrist, it was so casual, so unthinking, that no one else in the office even blinked. But I did. My entire body froze as if he'd burned me. Not because it hurt, but because it felt like the opposite, like safety, like home, like something I had no right to want. We worked in a corporate law office in downtown Chicago, the kind of place where fluorescent lights made people look like ghosts and deadlines were sharper than knives. I was the junior associate, drowning in case files and client meetings. My tie always a little crooked, my coffee always lukewarm. Though Ethan was untouchable. He was 3 years older, a senior associate with a reputation for being relentless in court but almost impossibly kind outside of it. His dark hair always had this effortless mess. His shirt sleeves rolled halfway like he was about to fight the entire world. And he smiled with the kind of patience you didn't find in law firms. The first time I met him, I thought, dangerous. Because anyone that steady, that magnetic, could only wreck me. And then, of course, he noticed me. Noticed that I skipped lunch more than I ate it. Noticed that I stayed later than everyone else. Noticed that my hands shook sometimes when I held a pen too long. And instead of ignoring it like everyone else started interfering. You're going to collapse one day, he muttered once, sliding a granola bar across my desk. I laughed it off. I'll survive. Not if you keep this up, he said, his eyes holding mine too long, too steady, too knowing. That was the beginning. The night everything changed. Chicago was drowning in summer rain. I was in the office past midnight again, staring blankly at evidence documents for a case that wasn't even mine. My shirt clung to me with sweat. My contacts burned. And my chest felt like it had forgotten how to breathe properly. I didn't hear the door until it clicked shut. You're still here. Ethan's voice, low and annoyed, cut through the silence. I turned, forcing a smile. Someone has to keep the lights on. He crossed the room. No hesitation. No apology for catching me at my lowest. His tie was gone, shirt collar open, and his hair damp from the storm. He looked like he belonged to another world. One where men weren't supposed to be beautiful in this careless, devastating way. You're going to kill yourself doing this, he said simply. He reached for the papers on my desk and stacked them with practiced precision. This isn't even your case. I tried to joke. Guess I'm just ambitious. But my voice cracked, and I hated it. Hated the way it betrayed me. Ethan didn't laugh. He looked at me like he could see every fracture, every hidden bruise inside my chest. And then he did the thing that undid me completely. He touched my wrist, warm and steady, grounding me in a way I didn't know I needed. Ambition isn't worth your health, he whispered. I should have pulled back. I should have laughed it off again. Instead, I stared at him, at the raindrops sliding down the window behind his shoulder, at the way the lamplight caught in his eyes. And something inside me broke wide open. The weeks that followed were a dangerous blur. Ethan kept interfering, in small, relentless ways. Coffee waiting on my desk before I arrived. Notes in his looping handwriting reminding me to take breaks. A quiet, constant presence that threaded itself into my life before I had a chance to stop it. And God, I didn't want to stop it. But I also knew this was a disaster waiting to happen. Because Ethan wasn't just my coworker. He was Ethan Rivers, the man every partner trusted, the golden boy of the firm. And I was just me, Luke Carter, barely keeping my head above water. The attraction was a slow, suffocating build. A glance held too long in the conference room. His hand brushing mine when we passed files back and forth. The way his laugh sank into my bones and stayed there, One night, after a grueling deposition, we ended up in the office kitchen alone. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. I was leaning against the counter, exhausted, my tie hanging loose. Ethan handed me a bottle of water and leaned beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "You need to start saying no," he murmured. "To what?" "To everything that isn't worth breaking yourself for." I swallowed hard. "And if I don't know what's worth it?" His eyes softened in a way that made my chest ache. "Then maybe let someone help you figure it out." There it was. The crackling, dangerous line neither of us should cross. And yet, in that moment, I wanted nothing more than to lean forward and let the world collapse. The collapse came sooner than I expected. A partner screamed at me in front of the entire floor one afternoon. My mistake. My oversight. My failure. I held it together until I was in the stairwell, chest heaving, eyes burning. And then the door creaked open, and Ethan was there. He didn't say anything, just closed the distance and pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me like steel and mercy all at once. I buried my face against his shoulder, trembling, ashamed and relieved in equal measure. "Breathe," he whispered into my hair. "Just breathe." I don't know how long we stayed like that, pressed against the cool stairwell wall, my world reduced to the steady rhythm of his chest against mine. It should have been wrong. It should have been dangerous. But it felt like the first honest thing in months. When I finally pulled back, his hand lingered at the back of my neck, fingers warm, thumb brushing skin that shouldn't have mattered but did. Our eyes met. The silence was electric. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice breaking. He didn't move closer. He didn't kiss me. He just looked at me with that unbearable gentleness that said he already knew all the things I couldn't say. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to run from Heimer toward him. That was the beginning of the end. Or maybe the beginning of something I didn't yet have the courage to name. Because once someone notices the cracks in you, you can never pretend to be whole again. And once you feel what it's like to be held by Ethan Rivers, no amount of pretending can make you forget. The thing about Ethan is that he never demanded anything from me. Not once. He didn't ask me to open up, didn't corner me into confessions, didn't even push when I dodged questions. He just stayed, steady, present. A quiet storm that hovered close enough to remind me he was there, but far enough to let me pretend I wasn't unraveling. And that, somehow, was worse than anything else. Because the longer he stayed, the harder it became to convince myself I didn't need him. I started noticing things I shouldn't. The way his laugh was softer in the evenings than it was in the mornings. How his hands flexed unconsciously when he was frustrated. The faint scar near his temple that only showed when his hair fell a certain way. None of these things mattered. Not in the real world. Not in the life we were supposed to be living, lawyers drowning in billable hours and ruthless ambition. But they mattered to me. Too much. The night I broke wasn't dramatic. Not in the cinematic way I'd expected. No screaming. No rain-soaked confrontation. Just me. At my desk. Staring at an email I couldn't bring myself to answer. It was from my father. We hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. And suddenly there it was, his name in my inbox. Like a knife. Words I couldn't read fully. Just enough to catch the tone: disappointment. Expectation. That familiar sharp edge that had carved me into who I was. I don't even remember standing. I just remember the sound of my chair scraping back. The walls of the office blurring as I stumbled toward the hallway. My chest hurt. My throat hurt. Everything inside me hurt. And then Ethan was there. I must have looked insane, because he didn't even ask what was wrong. He just took my arm, steady and certain, and pulled me into his office. Shut the door. Waited. "Luke," he said softly. My name. low and careful, like he was afraid I'd shatter if he said it too loud. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to force the burn away, but the sound that tore out of my chest wasn't something I could control. It was ugly. Raw. I can't, my voice broke. I can't do this, Ethan. I don't know what I meant. Work, life, breathing, all of it. And then his hands were on my shoulders, firm and grounding. You don't have to do it alone. Those words, so simple, so obvious, felt like a foreign language. I wanted to argue, to push him away, to protect the tiny scrap of pride I had left. But when I looked up at him, saw the quiet determination in his eyes, something inside me cracked wide open. I don't know how, I whispered. I'll show you, he said. And maybe it was reckless. Maybe it was unprofessional. Maybe it was every mistake I'd sworn I wouldn't make, but I leaned forward. Just slightly. Just enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against mine. The air between us thick with everything we weren't saying. He didn't move closer. He didn't take advantage. He just stayed there, holding me steady, letting me be the one to choose. And God help me, I wanted to choose him. We didn't kiss that night. Maybe that's what saved me. Maybe that's what doomed me. Instead, Ethan made me sit on his couch, handed me water, and stayed beside me until my breathing steadied. He didn't press for details. Didn't ask about the email, about my past, about the way my hands shook. He just stayed. When I finally stood to leave, embarrassed and raw, he only said one thing. Promise me you'll eat tomorrow. I wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to tell him that food wasn't going to fix me. But instead, I nodded. Because when Ethan asked for something, it wasn't a demand. It was a lifeline. The shift between us after that was subtle but undeniable. We were still co-workers. Still two professionals navigating an endless maze of deadlines and clients. But there was a thread now, invisible and constant, pulling us closer whether we wanted it or not. I caught myself watching him more often, how his brow furrowed when he read, how his jaw tightened when he argued in meetings. I started noticing when he was tired, when he was distracted, when he needed someone to slide him a coffee the way he always slid one to me. And he noticed everything. One morning, when I walked in late with my tie barely knotted, he raised an eyebrow and quietly fixed it for me before anyone else could see. His fingers brushed my throat, quick and efficient, but I felt it like a brand. Another night, when I fell asleep at my desk, I woke to find a blanket draped over me. His blanket. The faint smell of his cologne clung to it, warm and familiar, and I lay there longer than I should have, pretending I didn't know exactly who had placed it there. We were building something dangerous, something that lived in the silences, the almost, the what-ifs. And then, of course, someone noticed. It was Jenna, one of the other associates. Sharp as a knife, nosy as hell. She caught me one evening as I was leaving Ethan's office. My expression still too raw, my tie too loose. You and Rivers seem close, she said, her voice laced with implication. I laughed it off, too quickly. He's just nice. She arched an eyebrow. He's not nice to anyone. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Ethan wasn't like this with anyone else. He wasn't the one fixing other people's ties, or leaving coffee on their desks, or wrapping them in blankets when they collapsed. He was only like this with me. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. The first time we almost kissed. It wasn't planned. We were working late again, buried in documents for a case that was eating the entire firm alive. My head was pounding, my vision swimming, and Ethan finally snapped. Enough, he said, slamming the file shut. You're done for tonight. I can't. Yes, you can. His voice was firm, unyielding. He stood, walked around the desk, and crouched beside me so our eyes were level. Luke, you're burning yourself out. Stop. The way he said my name low, desperate-tunded me. I met his gaze, and for a moment the entire world fell away. There was nothing but him, his breath, his eyes, his hand hovering near mine, trembling with restraint. I leaned in, just enough, just close enough that I could taste the possibility of him. And then the phone rang. The spell shattered. We both jerked back, guilty and breathless, and pretended like nothing had happened. But the air between us was different after that. Heavier, hungrier. The truth was, I was already his. Long before we touched. Long before we crossed any line. I belonged to him in the way my heartbeat stuttered when he was near. In the way my lungs worked easier when he spoke. In the way my world felt less unbearable when he smiled at me. And I hated myself for it. Because wanting him meant risking everything: our careers, our reputations, the fragile control I had left. But not wanting him, that felt impossible. The breaking point came on a Friday night. The office was nearly empty, the city outside alive with weekend chaos. And I was buried in files again. Ethan appeared in my doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Dinner," he said. I blinked. "What?" "You're coming with me. Now." "I can't. I have." He walked over, snapped my laptop shut, and leveled me with a look that dared me to argue. "Luke, enough." Something in his tone, firm, protective, almost pleading, left no room for refusal. So I followed him. Out of the office, down the elevator, into the humid night. We ended up in a tiny diner a few blocks away. The kind with peeling vinyl booths and neon lights that buzzed faintly. It was so far from our world of suits and strategy that it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Ethan ordered for both of us. Burgers, fries, milkshakes. When the plates arrived, I stared at the food like it was an alien concept. "You're going to eat," he said, tone brooking no argument. I laughed weakly. "You sound like my mother." His expression softened. "Maybe your mother should have done a better job." The words hit me like a blow, because he didn't know how close he was to the truth, how raw the wound still was. I looked at him, really looked, and the air between us shifted again. Less restrained this time, more dangerous. "Ethan," I whispered. His jaw clenched. His hand tightened around his glass. And then, finally, he let the mask slip. "Luke," he said, voice low and rough. "You have no idea what you do to me." The world tilted. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All I could do was feel the weight of his gaze. The trembling in my hands. The undeniable pull between us. And in that diner, under the buzz of neon lights and the smell of grease, I realized there was no going back. We were already falling. The diner was almost empty. Just a tired waitress wiping down tables and a couple of teenagers arguing over who would pay for fries. But to me, it felt like the center of the universe. Ethan sat across from me in the booth, his shoulders tense, his eyes locked on mine, and every breath I took felt stolen. "You don't mean that," I said finally, my voice weak. His lips twitched, humorless, restrained. "You think I joke about this?" I shook my head. I didn't know what I thought. I only knew that the ground under me felt unstable, shifting with every second of his gaze. "You're my coworker," I whispered, desperate for logic, for rules. "This is insane." "I know," he said. Simple, honest, no denial, no excuses. "And I've tried to stop." God, Luke, I've tried. But every time I see you breaking yourself in that office, every time you laugh it off like you're not crumbling inside, His voice faltered. He dragged a hand down his face, raw and exposed in a way I'd never seen. I can't not care. And it's killing me. The milkshake between us went untouched. The fries went cold. My chest ached with the weight of his confession, with the realization that I wasn't alone in this reckless longing. Ethan, my throat was tight. You don't get it. I'm a mess. You deserve. Don't. His voice was sharp, almost fierce. Don't decide what I deserve. I'm standing right here, telling you what I want. And it's you. The words hung between us like a lit match. Dangerous. Irrevocable. And for the first time, I let myself admit it. I wanted him too. We didn't kiss in that diner. We sat there in silence, our food untouched, the air vibrating with everything we weren't brave enough to act on. When the waitress refilled our waters, we both jumped like guilty teenagers. When the check came, Ethan paid without looking at me. But the silence wasn't empty. It was alive, thick, humming with a new truth we couldn't take back. Walking back through the humid Chicago night, I kept my hands shoved deep in my pockets, terrified one wrong move would make me reach for his. The city buzzed around us, traffic, laughter, music spilling from bars, but all I could hear was my heartbeat. All I could feel was the heat radiating from him as we walked side by side. When we reached my apartment building, we stopped. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. This is reckless, I whispered. He nodded. Yeah. We stood there, two men on the edge of a line we couldn't uncross, both waiting for the other to make the final move. In the end, Ethan saved us again. He stepped back, shoved his hands in his pockets, and forced a smile. Get some sleep, Carter. I wanted to beg him to come up. I wanted to drag him inside. But instead, I watched him walk away, his shoulders stiff, his figure dissolving into the city lights. And I knew with a certainty that terrified Methat we wouldn't be able to hold this off forever. The following week was unbearable. Every meeting, every hallway encounter, every brush of his hand when he passed me a file felt like a live wire. I found myself staring at him when I shouldn't, memorizing the slope of his shoulders, the way his tie knotted at his throat. I caught him watching me too, his gaze dark and unreadable, and each time it happened I had to look away before I lost myself. The tension bled into everything. Jenna shot me curious glances. One of the partners asked why Rivers, and I suddenly seemed joined at the hip. I laughed it off, but my skin prickled with paranoia. One night, after everyone else had left, Ethan lingered in my office. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me type like he had all the time in the world. You know you don't have to prove yourself this way, he said quietly. I didn't look up. What way? By destroying yourself. His words hit too close. I slammed my laptop shut, frustration boiling over. You think I want to be like this? You think I don't know I'm falling apart? Then let me help, he said. And there it was again, the lifeline, the plea. I stood, angry at him, angry at myself, angry at the way the room felt too small with him in it. You don't get it, Ethan. If I let you in, if I let this happen, everything else falls apart. He moved closer, slow and steady, until I could feel the heat of him just inches away. His voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe it's worth it. My breath caught. My hands trembled. And for the first time, I didn't step back. It happened fast. 1 second we were arguing. The next his hand was at my jaw, rough and desperate, and then finally his lips were on mine. The world tilted, collapsed. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was years of restraint snapping all at once. Fire and hunger and desperation tangled together. His mouth was hot, insistent, claiming, and I gave in like I'd been waiting my whole life to. When we finally broke apart, gasping, his forehead pressed against mine, I realized I was shaking. "This is insane," I whispered. "Yeah." He breathed. His thumb brushed my cheek, soft despite the fire in his eyes. "But tell me you don't want it too." Couldn't. Because I did. God, I did. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of secrecy and stolen moments. We didn't talk about what it meant. Didn't define it. We just let it happen. Late nights in empty offices. Our hands tangling under desks. Kisses stolen in stairwells. Coffee breaks that lasted too long. Excuses that barely held up. Every moment was a risk. But the danger only made it sharper. More intoxicating. And yet, beneath the heat, there was something gentler too. The way he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear when I was too tired to see straight. The way he carried my bag once when my shoulder ached. The way he whispered my name like it was something worth saying. It wasn't just desire. It was something bigger. Something terrifying. Something like love. But love, in our world, was dangerous. And it didn't take long for the cracks to show. One evening, after another marathon day, we found ourselves in the stairwell again. My head was against the wall. His hands braced on either side of me. Our lips swollen from too many stolen kisses. "We can't keep doing this," I panted, though my hands were already clutching his shirt. "I know," he said, before kissing me again, deep and bruising. I wanted to believe we could live in this bubble forever. That no one would notice. That nothing would collapse. But reality had sharp edges. And it was waiting for us. And the first cut came sooner than expected. Jenna caught us. Not kissing. Not touching, thank God. But she walked into the stairwell one evening when Ethan's hand was still lingering too close to mine. Our bodies too close. Our gazes too loaded. Her eyes narrowed. Interesting. We both froze. Guilty as teenagers. "What?" Ethan said smoothly, his voice steady, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Jenna smirked. "Nothing. Just interesting." She walked away before either of us could respond. But her smirk haunted me, because I knew what she'd seen. And I knew it was only a matter of time before someone else did too. That night, in Ethan's apartment, I couldn't stop pacing. "This is going to blow up in our faces," I said, panic thick in my throat. "We'll lose everything. Our jobs. Our reputations. Everything we've worked for." Ethan watched me from the couch, his expression unreadable. Finally, he stood and crossed the room, catching my wrist mid-pace. "Luke," he said firmly. "Look at me." I did. God help me. I did. His eyes burned into mine, steady and unflinching. "I don't care about the job. I don't care about the firm. Care about you." The words hit me like a tidal wave. Terrifying. Overwhelming. True. And in that moment, I knew the line we'd crossed wasn't one we could ever go back from. We weren't just co-workers anymore. We were something else. Something dangerous. Something unstoppable. And I had no idea how to survive it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Even with Ethan's arms around me. Even with his breath steady against the back of my neck. My mind kept racing. Every possible outcome played out in brutal detail. Jenna whispering in the break room. A partner pulling us into a glass office to ask questions. The entire floor buzzing with rumors. And worst of all, the look on Ethan's face when this inevitably destroyed him. By morning, I was a mess of nerves. I slipped out of bed before dawn, careful not to wake him. But of course, Ethan stirred anyway, his voice rough with sleep. "Luke," he murmured, reaching for me. I froze at the doorway. "Go back to sleep. Don't run," he said softly. The word hit too deep. Run. That's what I did. From my father. From expectations. From anything that scared me. And now, from him. I started. But my voice cracked. Ethan sat up, the sheet pooling around his waist. Even half asleep. He was devastating. His hair a mess. His chest bare. His gaze steady in a way that stripped me raw. "You're scared," he said simply. I swallowed hard. "Shouldn't I be? You know what happens if this gets out." He stood, crossed the room in 3 steps, and cupped my jaw in his hand. "Then let it. Let them talk. Let them judge. I don't care." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the weight of reality pressed down too heavy. "You should care," I whispered, "because I'm not worth the price you'll pay." For a moment, pain flickered in his eyes. Then he leaned forward, kissed my forehead gentle. "Grounding. Unbearable. That's where you're wrong," he murmured. The following week was hell. Jenna didn't say anything outright, but her knowing glances were knives. I jumped every time she appeared near us, convinced she was about to drop the bomb. Every whisper in the office sounded like my name. Every email notification made my chest tighten. Ethan, of course, was infuriatingly calm. He carried on like nothing had changed, arguing cases, charming clients, smiling at partners. But beneath it, I saw the tension. The way his hand brushed mine a little less often. The way his gaze lingered but didn't touch. He was protecting me, I realized, shielding me even when it hurt him. And that hurt me more than anything. It all came to a head during the Johnson case. A high-stakes corporate battle that had the entire firm on edge. Ethan and I were paired on it. Of course, 2 of the hardest workers. 2 of the hungriest associates. Long nights blurred into mornings. Coffee became blood. Stress clung to everyone like smoke. One evening, as we pored over evidence in the conference room, Jenna walked in without knocking. "Working late again," she said lightly, her gaze flicking between us. "Big case," Ethan replied smoothly, not looking up from the file. Her lips curved. "Must be nice, having a partner you trust so much." The double meaning hung heavy. I stiffened, panic clawing at my throat. Ethan, however, didn't flinch. He met her gaze, steady and unyielding. "I trust Luke with everything," he said. The words were simple, professional, even. But the way he said them, the quiet conviction, the weight made my chest ache. Jenna smirked, said nothing, and left. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed in. "You shouldn't have said that," I whispered. "Why not? It's true." "Ethan," he slammed the file shut, frustration flashing across his face. "I'm tired of pretending this doesn't matter. That you don't matter." I stared at him, words dying in my throat. Because he was right. And that terrified me. The storm finally broke 2 days later. We were called into a partner's office. Mr. Davenport, a man with silver hair and eyes sharp enough to cut glass. He gestured for us to sit, his expression unreadable. "There have been concerns," he said, his gaze flicking between us. "Rumors, let's call them." My stomach dropped. Ethan stayed calm. "Rumors about what?" "You too," Davenport said flatly. "About the nature of your partnership." The silence that followed was suffocating. I opened my mouth, ready to deny, to beg, to lie. But before I could speak, Ethan did. "We're not letting gossip interfere with our work," he said evenly. "Our results speak for themselves." Davenport studied him, then me. "See that they do. This firm values discretion, professionalism." His eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't care what you do on your own time, but in this office, keep it clean." The dismissal was clear. We left, my pulse still thundering. That was a warning. I hissed once we were in the hall. Ethan shrugged, unfazed. "Then we'll be careful." "You don't get it," I snapped. "One wrong move, and we're done. Both of us." Finally, his calm cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes blazing. "So what? We keep hiding. Keep pretending we don't feel what we feel." "Yes," I shouted, my voice breaking. "Because I can't lose this job, Ethan. I can't lose everything I've worked for." The words tasted like betrayal, but they were all I had. Ethan stared at me, wounded and furious. Then he turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't stop him. The days that followed were agony. We spoke only when necessary. In meetings, we were polite, efficient, distant. At night, my apartment felt unbearably empty. I told myself this was safer, cleaner, better for both of us. But every time I caught a glimpse of him across the office, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed, I wanted to scream. I missed him. God, I missed him. And yet, I was the one who had pushed him away. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, after the Johnson case verdict. We'd won brilliantly, decisively. The firm celebrated, champagne flowing, partners slapping backs. But the victory felt hollow. I slipped out early. The noise too much, the loneliness worse. The rain had started again, the city slick and shimmering. I walked aimlessly, not caring where my feet carried me. And somehow, inevitably, they carried me to his building. I stood outside, drenched, heart pounding, staring up at his window. Light spilled out, warm and inviting, and I ached for it. Before I could lose my nerve, I went in, knocked on his door. Ethan answered, shirt rumpled, eyes widening at the sight of me soaked through. "Luke." I didn't let him finish. I stepped inside, shut the door, and before I could second-guess myself, I kissed him. Hard, desperate, apologetic. He froze for a split second. Then his hands were on me, pulling me closer, kissing me back with the same ferocity. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I whispered against his lips, "I'm sorry. I can't do this without you." His forehead pressed to mine, his voice rough. "Then don't." And just like that, I knew I wasn't running anymore. That night, everything changed. We shed our fear along with our clothes. Every kiss and touch a vow we were too raw to speak aloud. It wasn't just lust, it was years of restraint breaking. Two souls colliding. Fire and tenderness tangled together. Afterward, tangled in his sheets, I lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. For the first time in years, I felt safe, whole. And I knew, no matter the cost, I couldn't give this up. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up in Ethan's arms. His apartment was bathed in warm golden light, the curtains swaying gently with the breeze. A rare sense of peace seeped into every breath I took. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to jump out of bed. Didn't feel fear. Didn't think about deadlines or whispers behind my back. I just lay there, listening to the steady beat of his heart, tracing meaningless circles on his firm chest. You know what? Ethan's voice was husky, still laced with sleep. "I thought you'd run again." I froze for a second, then sighed. "I thought so too." I don't want to anymore. He tilted his head, his gaze a mix of sadness and relief. Then don't leave me alone this time. Those words pierced straight through my chest. I pressed my lips to his, sealing the promise without words. But happiness never lasts unbroken. When I returned to work, I had already braced myself for the looks from my colleagues. And just as I feared, the office no longer felt the same. Jenna gave me a sly half-smile full of implication. A few others whispered to each other when I walked past. The worst was when I realized the rumor had spread beyond our floor. In the elevator, 2 employees from another department spoke quietly. But I heard every word. I heard Ethan's sleeping with someone on his team. Yeah, the guy's name is Luke. Right? Never would have guessed. Blood rushed to my face. I lowered my head and hurried out of the elevator, as if moving fast enough would make the whispers vanish behind me. Ethan caught up with me in the hallway. You okay? I snapped. Okay. They're talking about me, Ethan. He placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Let them talk. We haven't done anything wrong. Nothing wrong. I laughed bitterly. To them, we've broken the rules. And to the higher-ups, I'm just someone who climbed up by sleeping with the best. Ethan squeezed my shoulder, forcing me to meet his eyes. I won't let anyone belittle you. Do you hear me? You're here because of your talent, not because of me. I wanted to believe him, but the weight of those rumors was crushing. The tension worsened when an internal email was mistakenly sent to the entire company. In it, an anonymous employee complained about the lack of professionalism of certain associates, with wording that clearly hinted at my relationship with Ethan. No one said it outright, but everyone looked at us differently. I felt isolated, as if a wall of glass had gone up between me and the entire office. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, laptop open, the words on the screen dancing into nonsense. When Ethan called, I didn't pick up. When he knocked, I didn't open the door. Not until I heard his quiet voice through the door. Luke, I know you're in there. Don't lock yourself away. Let me in. With trembling hands, I unlocked it. The moment I saw him, I broke down, sobbing like a child. Ethan pulled me into his arms, letting my tears soak his shirt. I'm here. Don't carry this alone. I'm scared, I hiccuped. I'm scared they're right. Scared I don't deserve this job. Scared one day I'll lose everything, even you. He lifted my chin, making me meet his gaze. Listen to me, Luke. You've worked yourself to the bone. You're better than anyone here. No one has the right to say you don't deserve it. And me, his voice faltered, roughening with emotion. I'm not going anywhere. No matter what happens, I choose to stay. My heart clenched. I kissed him not out of fear, not to hide, but because I knew he was where I belonged. But life is never that simple. A month later, the company announced the shortlist for promotions. I was in the top 3. The news should have made me happy, but instead it fueled the fire of gossip. Of course, sleeping with Ethan makes everything easier. I heard someone sneer in the break room. I spun around, my glare sharp as a blade. But the person only shrugged and walked away, leaving the sting burning in my chest. That evening, I told Ethan, I'm going to withdraw. I can't let them think I got here this way. His eyes widened. Are you crazy? You fought for this opportunity. But they'll never believe I deserve it. Then screw them. Ethan's voice rose, almost shouting. Luke, I've lived my whole life with people doubting me. I learned to block it out. But you, he stopped, his voice breaking. You've always believed in your own worth. Don't let them steal that from you. Tears welled up in my eyes. You don't understand. I'm not just worried about myself. I'm worried about you. I don't want to be the reason your career suffers. He stepped closer, gripping my hand tightly. Listen, I don't need a career if it means losing you. I don't need a reputation if it comes at the cost of the person I love. I froze. For the first time, he said it. Love. My heart nearly burst. In the days that followed, we lived in two parallel worlds. By day, in front of colleagues, we were cold and distant. By night, behind closed doors, we were inseparable. Every touch, every kiss, every breath carried both longing and fear. It felt like we were burning in a fire that could be extinguished with just a small gust of wind. One night, I asked, if one day they force us to choose, what will you do? Ethan didn't answer right away. He only pulled me close, whispering, I'll choose you. Always. The breaking point came during a board meeting. The rumors had grown too big to ignore. One of the senior partners asked outright, Ethan, Luke, do you have anything to say about the special relationship people are talking about? The room froze. Every eye turned to us. My heart pounded. My mouth dry. I opened it, ready to deny. But Ethan grabbed my hand under the table. His grip was firm, steady. Yes, he said, his voice calm but strong. We love each other. But that doesn't affect our work. The best evidence is in the cases we've won recently. A wave of shock rippled across the room. I could barely breathe. But at the same time, a strange strength filled my chest. For the first time, we weren't hiding anymore. Davenport, the strictest partner, stayed silent for a long moment before saying, I don't care what you do outside these walls. But in here, the only thing I care about is results. If I see emotions clouding your legal judgment, I'll be the first to sign your termination papers. Understood? Ethan nodded. I nodded too, my hand still locked in his. That night, when we got home, I laughed through tears. You're insane. How could you just say it like that? Ethan pulled me into his arms, laughing hoarsely. Because I'm tired of living like love is a crime. I buried my face in his chest and whispered, Me too. And that night, we made love as if the outside world didn't exist. But deep down, I knew the real battle had only just begun. The firm kept running. The cases remained heavy. But Ethan and I had entered a different phase. We no longer hid. And we no longer trembled in fear. Yet the truth that we were now in an open relationship placed a heavier weight on our shoulders. My family was the next challenge. My mother called one evening after I had just finished a long trial. Her voice trembled, not from weakness, but from restrained anger. Luke, I've heard the news. Is it true? You and that colleague of yours. I gripped the phone tightly. Yes, Mom. He and I are together. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then she whispered, Do you understand how hard this will be for the family to accept? Your father. I know. I cut her off, trying to keep my voice steady. But I can't live a lie anymore. I'm happy with him. She broke into tears. I closed my eyes, my hand trembling. Ethan walked by and saw me from across the room. I could see he wanted to come closer, but he stopped, letting me say what I needed to say. Since I was little, you always taught me that love has to be real. Mom, I whispered, and this is the truest love I've ever known. She stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, she said only, I need time. I hung up, leaned against the wall, my chest aching. Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind in silence. He didn't need words. I knew he understood. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A massive lawsuit the firm had taken on against a powerful construction conglomerate suddenly became a storm in the media, and I was the lead attorney in charge of investigating the evidence. Things grew tense when a key witness disappeared, and one late night, while I was driving home from the office, a car began tailing me. Its headlights blazed in my rearview mirror, and my heart nearly stopped. I pressed the accelerator. The car sped up too. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just work anymore. This was a warning. Just then, my phone rang. It was Ethan. I answered on speaker, my voice shaking. "Someone's following me. Pull over somewhere busy. Luke, listen to me. Don't stop anywhere deserted. I'm coming right now." I did as he said, my heart pounding out of control. When I finally pulled into a brightly lit gas station, the car vanished into the darkness. I was trembling, almost collapsing against the wheel. 10 minutes later, Ethan rushed in, pulling me into his arms under the cold fluorescent light. He didn't care who was watching. "I thought I lost you," he gasped, his forehead damp with sweat. I clung to him, whispering, "I'm still here. I won't leave you." That incident forced the firm to intervene more aggressively. Ethan refused to leave my side. He came with me to the office, sat beside me as I reviewed files, and every night he held me until the tremors faded. In the chaos, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had lived my whole life terrified of what others thought, scared of losing my job, my reputation, my family's approval. But when death brushed so close, I understood the only real fear was not living truthfully with the person I loved. The day of the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. I stood before the panel, presenting the last pieces of evidence our team had spent months gathering. My voice shook at first, but when I caught Ethan's gaze in the back row, his eyes glowing with unwavering trust, I suddenly felt calm. Each argument, each number, each witness statement came out sharp as a blade. When the gavel finally struck and the judge declared victory in our favor, the entire room erupted in noise. I nearly collapsed. Ethan rushed forward, ignoring the dozens of cameras, and embraced me tightly. "You did it," he whispered in my ear. "I'm so proud of you." Tears caught in my throat as I held him close. "Without you, I would have broken long ago." The flashes of cameras went off around us, but I didn't care. For the first time, I let the whole world see that I belonged to him. Months later, I returned to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, her eyes still complicated. But this time, Ethan stood beside me, his hand entwined with mine. I no longer hid. Dinner was wrapped in silence. Then my father set his chopsticks down, fixing his eyes on me. "Son, this isn't something easy for me to accept. But I saw you on television. I saw you fight in that courtroom. You've grown far beyond what I imagined. If that's the person who helped you become who you are today." He glanced at Ethan, his stern eyes no longer cold. "Then I won't stand in your way." My eyes burned with tears. Ethan bowed his head, his voice deep. "I promise to take care of Luke for the rest of my life." My mother cried again, this time not out of rejection, but release. She wrapped her arms around both of us and whispered, "As long as you're happy." 1 year later, Ethan and I moved into a new apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. Every morning, we brewed coffee together, watching the sunlight shimmer across the water. Every evening, after long days in court, we cooked dinner side by side, then curled up on the sofa watching terrible movies, laughing until our stomachs ached. It wasn't always easy. Work pressure sometimes drove us to argue. Old fears sometimes resurfaced. But every single time, we found our way back to each other. One evening, as I stood on the balcony, Ethan wrapped his arms around me from behind and whispered, Do you remember the day I told you I'd always choose you? I smiled and nodded. I still mean it, he said. No matter how many years pass, no matter how the world changes, I'll choose you. Every morning, every night, forever. I turned to face him, looking straight into his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I truly believed in forever. We kissed beneath the blazing red sunset, as if every ounce of pain we'd endured had only been to lead us here. And I knew, at last, that we had found where we belonged. The end, a happiness tender, yet fierce just like the journey we had taken. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.